Hi guys. So in last class, what we did, we created a generic helper class and we added two generic methods, like read properties file and read test data JSON files. Okay, based on whatever parameter user can pass, they'll get the specific data details. Okay, so now coming to second part of this is like creating user management helper class. Okay, so why this user management helper class? Okay, so what happens now, you in real time, what happens, you will be having multiple modules in your applications. Okay, so for every modules, what and all methods are required, it is better to keep separate. Okay, so that like code readability will be good. If you'll face any difficulties, so some problem occurs, then you can reach it to the specific module and you can easily rectify that. Okay, so this is what the intention behind keeping this. Okay, so let's go and create. And one more good thing is like in real time, what happens now, so whenever you will be writing scripts, it is always good to hide the complex things from the test script. Okay, it is always better and good practice to keep complex things outside it in some other class. Just you can use that, and complex things will be at the back. Okay, so once I'll create, then it will be like more clearer. Okay, why we are trying to do that. Okay, so let me go here, create one class like user management class. Okay, user management helper. Okay, helper class. Okay, it will be, so we have created one class, user management helper class. Okay, now what we'll do with our example, we'll take one with our user management class, we'll take example of get specific user details. Okay, so whatever id you will provide here, no, so that user details will come. Okay, see here, it came. So let me check how many users are there. Currently we have one user. Let me add one more quickly. Okay, so it got added with id 6. Okay, so now let's hit this. So now we are getting two users, right? And if we will hit this user 6, then user 6 details should come. Yeah, perfectly fine, it is coming. Like, so we will be using example of this one. Okay, so now let me write one method, public response. Why I wrote response, I'll let you know. Okay, get get specific user details. Okay, and just write like this, perfectly fine. So why I am returning response here? Okay, because this response, whatever response will come, no, we will be using in our test script to do assertions. Okay, that's what I am returning here, response. Okay, and this class we will be using sorry, spelling mistake is there. Yeah, perfect. So that response we will be using in our test case while doing assertions. Okay, I'll show you that also. Have patience. And what and all, like see, whenever we are writing any methods, right, like get user or means create user, so we need some certain data set, right? So to get a specific user details, user will be providing this one, right? So whatever id user will provide, that details will come. Okay, so some data set we need. So how we will be taking that data set in the form of map? You can think like you can might be you'll be thinking why we are making it map like this. Okay, we can directly pass a string also, you can do that. Okay, but here what we are trying to make all methods generic and like all similar across. Okay, so what will happen now, sometimes in some method you need to provide two parameters or three parameters, like in create user we need to provide multiple parameters, right? So see, these many things are there, so it is always better to have the test data in the form of map object. Okay, so test data. Okay, so that's what I am creating it. Okay, once we'll start writing our test, no, it will be more clearer. Okay, so now get specific user details. Now to get specific user details, what and all we need? Okay, we need id user id. Okay, so let me create one id, int id equal to, so test data dot get user id. Okay, user id. So from where this user id will come? This user id will come from here. Okay, whatever map object user will pass, that data will come, and inside that one user id key will be there and value will be there. Okay, so using this we can get this. So here why error is throwing, because see, we have defined here map string and string, and but here we are trying to get int value. That's what it is telling. So whenever you want to convert any string in integer, you need to use this integer dot parse int. Okay, integer dot parse int. Okay, so just you pass the string. So this is also one important question they used to ask in interview. Okay, so now we got the id. Okay, now id is there. Now what else we need? We need one object of URL generator, right? Because where is our URL generator? Because this is what the URL we will be hitting. Okay, to hit that URL we need to provide base URL also, right? See, this base URL is required, right? So let me create one global variable string base URL. Okay, perfectly fine. Okay, so now string base URL. Okay, now what else we need? We need to hit this get method, right? This get method. So that whatever URL will pass, based on that test data will come, right? So to to use the methods defined under this REST utils, again we need to have an instance of that, right? So REST utils class. Okay, perfectly fine. Let me import this. Okay, what happened? Change to rest utils. Okay, it was caps, that's what it was showing there. Okay, perfectly fine. Now this is done, this is done. Now we need URL also, right? So for URL generator also we need to create one instance so that we can use these variables. Okay, so let me go here and create one URL generator instance. Okay, so let me put the name as this one. Okay, so now, as you know, to use any methods defined under this, we need to first create object of that. See, here we have defined, but we have not created object. Okay, so let me do one thing. We'll create one constructor. Okay, inside that constructor we will initialize those things. Okay, so public is constructor. Yeah, perfectly fine. Now, whenever user will try to use methods defined under this, what they need to do, they need to create object of this one. Okay, so but see, here we are trying to create this one, user management, but still we don't have information about base URL because this is coming from the config file. Okay, so under resources we have created one config.properties, right? So here it is coming. So user need to provide this data also, right? So what will happen? No, whenever user will create test and they will try to use methods inside this, so they need to create object of this one. Okay, and they need to pass string base URL here. Okay, so once they'll provide base URL, that base URL will come and sit over here so that we can use it. Okay, so let me do this dot base URL is equal to this one. Okay, perfectly fine. Now we got the base URL. So whenever user will create any object of this one using this constructor, they need to provide the base URL. Now for REST utils, we need to create utils equal to new REST utils. Okay, so this object is also defined, perfectly fine. Now we have to create object of this one. Okay, so URL. Okay, so now equal to new URL generator. Okay, perfectly fine. See here, the URL generator, we have one constructor that is asking for a string. Why it is asking for a string and what it is actually asking? It is asking the base URL. So whatever base URL you will provide, no, it will append there, so that our API endpoint will become like this. Okay, so what it will do, it will append the base URL over there. Okay, that's what we have written it over here. Okay, so to create instance of this, user need to provide this base URL. Okay, so here what we will do, we will provide the base URL. Which base URL? This is what the string we have created, right? So this base URL we will be providing it over here. Okay, so now see, you can see like our all requirement is done over here. Now we have ID also, we got it, right? We got the ID also. Now let me write one try catch block over here. Okay, catch exception. Okay, let me format it. Okay, now inside try block, okay, inside try block, we will be what, we will be hitting this one, get request. Okay, so then we will provide this user ID in that URL, then it will give us the response. Okay, so utils dot get. Okay, so and it is asking for URL. So from URL, where we can get this URL, we can get this from this URL generator. So there we are passing the base URL, and then that base URL is getting appended here. So this is what our expectation is, this is what we want, right? So this is what after creating instance of this, so these all variables will be like this one, base URL will all automatically get appended based on the provided base URL, right? So now dot get users, this is what our, so URL dot get users, right? See, now what we have here till now, we have base URL plus get users. Okay, so in see, base URL is this one and get users was this one. So what happened, whenever we provided the base URL as parameter over here, so it went there and see get users, so they have added this one at the starting. So this one base URL plus this one, this is what we have till now. Okay, so till now we got this one, but our requirement is to use this ID over here, right, to get a specific user details. Okay, so how now we can provide? Okay, now go here, see here, base URL, it is done, user ID. See, we have fetched user ID over here. Okay, so this is what the URL is. So here our URL is till this one. Okay, let me copy it so that it will be more clearer to you. Okay, so now, so time being currently what it is till here, you have till here. Now what else you need to do, you need to add this and you need to give the ID either 1 or 6 or whatever it is the available one. Okay, so for that we can append that. Okay, we can append this, so we have appended the slash sign. Okay, now we need to append the ID. So this is what the ID we have, so they just copy it and paste it over here. Perfectly fine, right? Just okay. Now let me remove this. Now it is clear. Okay, now see what this get method is returning. Okay, let's go there and check it out. So it is returning response that we need to send it over here, right? So let me create one instance of response. Okay, response. Okay, now we can store that value inside this response, right? Perfectly fine, and we can return this response. Okay, we'll return it after some time. Okay, or else let me write that, return this. Okay, this is what it will return. Now you got the response. Okay, now what we'll do, we'll add some generic, some basic validation here itself. Okay, okay, and we will try if suppose we'll add basic assertion. In that basic assertion, what we are going to do, we are going to assert the status code. because we know whenever user will hit the get users API, they'll get this status code as 200. Okay, so that status code we will be defining it over here. Okay, so if we'll check, okay, if response, what response, this is what the response we received, right? Response dot get status code. Okay, if get status code is not equal to 200, okay, it means some failure has occurred, right? If it is 200, then it is fine. If it is not 200, then what we have to do, we have to throw exception. Okay, now if it is not 200, then we can write like throw new exception. Okay, with what message we can throw, we can provide some message over here. Okay, so what message, see here defining it very nicely. Okay, okay, let me put frame some sentence like this. Okay, failed to get user details with id, with id, what id it was, id was you, this id, right? So let me paste it here. Okay, so id, see here, this is our id. So what happens if exceptions will come, then it is like failure. So we are throwing this error, so this error will be captured in our console logs. Okay, that's what means while debugging, when you'll go and see the test results after running, so it will be easy for you to identify which got failed and why it got failed. Okay, so I'm writing here some message. Okay, so fail to get user details with id, this one and API, this one. Okay, this is what the API it was, right? And sorry, plus we need to give plus, then inverted comma, and using API, this one. Okay, using API plus sign, let me paste it over here, perfectly fine. Okay, so this is what the means our expectation was this, but it got failed. And what for which id it got failed, for this id. Okay, and using API, which API, this is what the API details will be here. Okay, now let me add some more details. Okay, so what else we can tell, and the response code. Okay, what response came in, suppose some exception came and some response comes. Okay, so in that, then and the response body is, and the response body is, let me append that, response dot get body. Okay, dot as string. Okay, so now what it will do, whatever exception will come, it will print this detailed message. Okay, let me little format it. Okay, now so this it will throw, and here write me write exception e k and throw e dot get message. Okay, perfectly fine. What when no dot get message throw new exception. Okay, we need to write this new exception. Okay, and inside that we can write like this, perfectly fine. Okay, now this error is coming. Okay, we haven't added semicolon, that's what that error is there. Now we need to throw declaration. Okay, perfectly fine. See how nice it is. Okay, now we have created this get specific user details method. Okay, so what it is doing, it is first fetching the id, then it is hitting that get url, then it is verifying the response. If response is not 200, then it is telling what is the error, with which id it is the error, what api it was using to throw that error, and what was the exception, whatever the body came, okay, in the error details will come, okay. So those details is done. So this is what we created for get specific user details, okay. So likewise we will be adding like add user details, and there also we will be handling these exceptions like that, okay. So here currently I haven't created any like user defined exceptions, okay. You can define your own exception, like any exception, any class you can define, you need to extend this exception, and then after you can define your own exceptions, okay. So those things I haven't done, so simply whatever it is available with that I have given here, okay. Now let's go to our test class and we'll try this, okay, whether it is working or not. So let me add the rate test uh, public void get user details, okay, get user details. Now import it, okay. Or else let's stop here, guys. So in next video we will add our first test and I can show you using this user management class what we have created, and we will add our first test case, okay. So then it will be like more clearer, okay. So thank you guys, thank you for now.